What's up, deckheads? June 2025 is here, the sun is shining, the backlogs are crying, and Humble Choice has dropped another bundle of games to tempt us away from productivity and responsibilities. I'm going to review every game in the bundle and tell you whether it's worth your cash or just plain trash. As usual, I've worked these games over with my deck in hand because nothing says precision testing like one-on-one time with a handheld companion. And yes, I'm still doing Steam Key giveaways, but with a twist. If you've been listening to the Humble Talk podcast, you know that I'm moving countries. Unfortunately, the new rules say no more random winners, only those selected based on skill. So, if you want one of the keys showing on the screen, drop a killer comment with the name of the game you want. Make it clever, funny, insightful, whatever gets my attention. What kind of comments do I like? No idea. Surprise me like a PG family movie from the 80s with that one unnecessary sex scene for you and your parents to all watch together in awkward silence. Okay. Without further ado, let's get started. Warhammer 40,000 Boltgun is what happens when a space marine stumbles into a 90s LAN party, drinks a gallon of Mountain Dew, and starts speedrunning carnage through a pixelated bloodbath. It's a boomer shooter through and through, gory, chunky, and gloriously over the top, but with enough Warhammer flavor to make you feel like the Emperor himself handed you that boltgun. Movement is weighty, gunplay is downright delicious, and even your jumps land with the kind of impact that says, yes, this suit is compensating for something. Secrets are tucked into every corner like heretics hiding from a purity scan, and blasting your way through demons has never felt so righteous. The Y button lets you mock the unclean while praising the Emperor. Sure, it might not be necessary, but neither is using gyro aiming when I pee in the toilet, and yet, behold my aiming precision. Like the gore of the enemies you gun down, performance is a bit all over the place on the Steam Deck, typically running between 40 and 90 frames per second, but with noticeable dips down into the 20s. Battery holds for around 2.5 hours. Just make sure to crank up the joystick sensitivity in the settings, and do yourself a favor by mapping touchpad or gyro support for precision carnage. If you're after a fast-paced, cathartic purge wrapped in retro shooter glory, Boltgun is blessedly brutal deck bliss. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered take you back to a time when vampires weren't just sexy, they were tortured, brooding, and occasionally threw you into rivers. You play as Raziel, a former vampire turned wraith, out to get revenge on his ex-boss Kain for turning him into a walking skeleton with a soul-eating problem. The story goes hard on the dark and gloomy atmosphere, and for the late 90s, it was surprisingly mature. Gameplay is puzzle heavy, but the puzzles are just the right balance to engage you without having you pull up a walkthrough. Combat feels decent considering the age, and it's surprisingly fun discovering that what looks like set dressing is actually your next vampire staking implement. You can't just punch your way through enemies, you need to finish them off with some sunlight, water, or a good old impaling. The realm switching mechanic is still the star of the show. Absorb enough souls, and you can shift from the spirit realm to the physical one, opening new paths and puzzle solutions. Just don't hang around too long in the material world without energy, or you'll be booted back into ghost mode whether you like it or not. This remaster is a joy to play on the Steam Deck, locked at 90 frames per second during gameplay, and with an impressive 6 hours of battery life, the games are perfect for a long-haul nostalgia trip. Sure, compared to modern standards, the action might feel a bit slow and the environment a bit sparse, but there's no denying these games were ahead of their time. If you're into atmospheric world building, clever mechanics, and vampires that don't look like boy band rejects with glitter glue, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 are absolutely worth a run. Enjoying the video so far? Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more deckhead content. Or don't, I'll just assume you like playing mobile gacha games and being a disappointment to your parents instead. Nobody Wants to Die is what happens when L.A. Noire gets cryogenically frozen, wakes up in a Blade Runner fever dream, and immediately lights a cigarette. You play as Detective James Kara, a walking, talking noir cliché with a trademark gravel voice, 2 weeks of forced leave, and enough trauma to fuel a whiskey distillery. The real star here is the detective work. You reconstruct crime scenes, unearth clues, and link them together. The dialogue choices don't just fill space, they change the outcome. It's immersive, stylish, and captivating in all the right ways. Regarding Steam Deck performance, while Nobody Wants to Die, your Steam Deck just might. The opening rain scene is basically a stress test designed to murder your frame rate with dips into the 20s even on the lowest settings. To keep things playable, you need to turn on every performance saving trick in the book. in-game upscaling, low graphics, FSMR set to ultra performance, and a full-on exorcism of motion blur. Do not make the mistake of setting your resolution based on the opening scene alone. I first played with a resolution dropped really low, and while now at a somewhat normal frame rate, it was like I had smeared Vaseline onto the beautiful OLED screen. Using the deck's native 1200 by 800, you'll avoid most of the worst stuttering outside of a few specific choke points. Even with all the graphical compromises, the core gameplay loop is strong enough to pull you in. And playing on the deck does feel like watching a noir thriller on a 4K TV, just through a foggy window. You'll get the story, the intrigue, and the atmosphere, just not the visual polish the devs intended. Still, if you're into moody futurism and solving crimes with your deck in one hand and your fan blasting like a jet engine, Nobody Wants to Die is a ride worth taking.
Buddy, I didn't know I was here.
Dungeons of Hinterberg is what you'd get if Breath of the Wild and Persona 5 went on a European ski trip and accidentally summoned a dungeon full of monsters. Set in a quaint alpine town where magic and mayhem showed up 3 years ago, you play as Louisa, a burned out law intern who one day decided to take a holiday and slay monsters. The town's now a tourist hotspot for thrill seekers, and honestly, it's the most relatable midlife crisis I've ever played. The game loop is tight and addictive. By day, you explore the semi-open world, dive into puzzle-filled dungeons that were carefully thought out by the devs, and bash monsters with satisfying combat. By night, it's all about Persona-style socializing. Go shopping, sip tea with locals, and build relationships with key characters to gain buffs. Performance on the Steam Deck is smooth, running between 42 and 60 frames per second with no noticeable dips. Battery life is 2.5 hours, which, let's face it, is on the shorter side for the OLED and is something you'd expect from a more graphically intense game. The cel-shaded art style, with a kind of bomb rush cyberpunk meets alpine Instagram filter, looks gorgeous on the OLED screen, even if at first glance it doesn't scream must play. But give it a few hours and the charm starts to seep in. That's why I'm proudly giving Dungeons of Hinterberg the Grower Not a Shower award. Tchia is what happens when Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and Breath of the Wild take a holiday to New Caledonia and come back with a love child. A beautiful, incestuous love child. It's an open-world adventure full of soul-jumping, ukulele strumming, and laid-back island vibes that practically beg you to kick off your shoes, slide under a blanket, and forget your real-life responsibilities ever existed. The map doesn't tell you exactly where you are, which is either charmingly immersive or mildly stressful, depending on whether you're the type of person who asks for directions or would happily crash your car if Google Maps told you to. Thankfully, your boat's location is always marked, and landmarks always show whether you've been there before, so even the chronically lost have hope. The story gives you enough purpose to tether the experience together, but the real joy is in the exploration, and occasionally vandalizing the town, kidnapping dogs, and unleashing physical abuse on the locals. On the Steam Deck, Tchia floats along at a cozy 28 to 32 frames per second with a 4-hour battery life. Perfect for curling up and sinking into island life, one hammock nap at a time. It's mellow, beautiful, and low stress yet still engaging. That's why I'm giving Tchia the Deck Play Under the Covers award. Sker Ritual is a roguelike PvE co-op shooter where you and your mates mow down waves of grotesque monstrosities, rack up points, and pray that whatever perk you get raises more than just your expectations. It plays out across different scenarios, each with story objectives to progress, if you can figure out how to do them. Since the game does as good a job of explaining as a drunk uncle telling an incoherent ghost story. Gameplay-wise, it runs surprisingly well on the Steam Deck, typically between 44 and 55 frames per second, with controls that feel tight using the default layout, especially right trackpad as joystick. Solo mode is available, but it defeats the purpose of a co-op online shooter. Matchmaking was okay. I found a match with a rando after 3 minutes of waiting, but let's be honest, this one's clearly meant to be played with friends who will tolerate you panicking and screaming like a little girl. I'll be jumping into Sker Ritual soon with Stealthy Shiroean, my co-host from the Humble Talk podcast, so keep an eye out for that video. Stealthy is in charge of bringing the strategy and skill, and I'll be bringing the blind panic. It's time to announce the winner of last month's Steam Key giveaway. Congratulations to JM8084. Make sure to send a chat message to the Reddit user Decusheadus to claim your key. Biped is proof that all you need to save the world is 2 legs. Coordination is optional. Each stick controls a leg, and every step feels like a physics puzzle disguised as a trust exercise with gravity. It's a game clearly built for co-op, because nothing says love like blaming a family member dropping you into a chasm. Puzzles come fast and varied, just enough to keep your brain on its feet. And if you're flying solo, don't worry. The game provides a solo campaign with helpful NPCs to assist you, right before you leave them stranded, like the cold, heartless robot you are. Mechanically, the game is simple, but it oozes charm from every glowing servo. With vibrant visuals, cutesy robots, and addictive coin collection, Biped manages to turn the simple act of walking into an adorable act of heroism. It runs beautifully on the deck at a locked 60 frames per second, though with a battery life of 2.5 hours, you might want to keep a charger within walking distance. Havendock starts off strong. You wake up on the world's tiniest island in the middle of the ocean, and instead of eating seagulls or anthropomorphizing a volleyball and making us develop an emotional attachment to it, you decide to build a floating utopia on planks and stubborn optimism. Survival mechanics are all here. Filter your water, grow your food, welcome strays like you're building an aquatic cult. It's got charm, but also that unmistakable early access aroma, like someone served you the dough and said, just imagine the bread. On the Steam Deck, the game controls just fine, using trackpad as mouse and with some minor tinkering for keyboard buttons. Frame rate runs perfectly at 60 frames per second, but for a game that doesn't seem to be doing anything intense, it does a terrible job at rationing the battery. But performance isn't the issue here, engagement is. The game's not bad per se, just undercooked. A bit like if Raft and The Sims had a baby and just one day decided to stop caring for it. You're clicking, building, upgrading, and then waiting for something interesting to happen. Spoiler, it doesn't. If this bundle is a restaurant meal, Havendock is the complimentary dinner roll. You didn't order it, you didn't need it, but now you're eating it while you wish you were eating something better. Forget the player, this game's chances of survival are looking slim. That's it for this month's games, but is the bundle worth your cash or just plain trash? Before I answer that, if you also enjoy playing with your deck in public and don't care who's watching, then make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. This month is probably my favorite bundle of 2025 so far. Only one game is mediocre, I'm looking at you Havendock, but even then, it's not a horrible game. Sure, Nobody Wants to Die only runs at an acceptable speed with some upscaling, but it is still playable. Don't forget to check out the Humble Talk channel, where Stealthy Shiroean and I dive even deeper into this month's bundle. Also, make sure to check out his channel if you're interested in getting a PC-specific perspective on the games. See you next time, deckheads.